Politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners.
I am the Rambling Madman.
I have this feeling, man, because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. It's not a I'm not a conspiracy nut.
Motherfuckers are so sensitive, the whole country is turned into bitch-ass niggas.
Alright everybody, hello and welcome back to another episode of Ramblings of the Madman. Today is episode 6. We're 6 episodes in, chugging along nicely. I'm the host, Mark Chigarella, aka the Rambling Madman. And today we have a very special episode for you. As you can see, I hope you like the funky new intro that I got going on here today. And that's going to be the intro going forth from here and for every episode. I had my main man Josh hook it up for me, and I like the way it came out. So, getting into today's episode, I have a very, very, very special guest coming on today, and his name is Preppernurse1. He has a YouTube channel, 90,000 subscribers on YouTube, not too shabby, and basically his YouTube channel is dedicated to living a life off-grid and being a quote-unquote doomsday prepper, hence the nurse Preppernurse1. He is also a nurse. So yeah, we're going to get into all sorts of stuff regarding, prepping and his life as a prepper. And his life living off grid as well, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys find it cool. Taking a little bit of a break from the harder conspiracy type things that are always fun and interesting to hear, but I'll be the first to admit they can be they can be quite exhausting. So I don't want to spend too much time rambling on before we talk to Prepper Nurse here, but I guess let's catch up on what's happened over the past week or so since I last spoke to you guys. So I guess the biggest thing would be the news with GameStop and AMC movies. I'm not no financial expert by any means. I don't claim to know the ins and outs of the stock markets. I don't know exactly how this happened, but basically a Reddit community called Wall Street Bets basically got some insider information, or from what I hear, that's what happened. And they made a bunch of billionaires lose a bunch of money, GameStop stocks, and I think that's awesome. I don't know how they did it. I'm not, like I said, I'm no financial expert. I think it's awesome that they were able to do that and cause these billionaires so much trouble, if you will. And it was awesome seeing them freak the fuck out on the news and on CNBC and basically call the people who are taking this money from them peasants, and that they don't deserve to get the money that they're getting on these stocks. And like I said, I'm not doing the story any justice. If you want to look into what happened, go ahead and Google it. It's all over Google and Twitter and Reddit. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. I know a lot of people are pissed off about the stimulus checks. Republicans, or not Republicans, Democrats are in particular pissed off about the stimulus checks because they feel cheated by Biden, because he had promised $2,000 stimulus checks, and now that's been reduced to $1,400, and Republicans want it to be reduced to $1,000, and so yeah, that's kind of where we're at with politics as of right now, or in news in general. We're still keeping a watchful eye out for the COVID monster. Wearing 2 masks now. Pretty soon it's probably going to be 3 or 4. And not hugging and kissing our loved ones and staying away from everybody. And wear a mask when you're outside and wear a mask when you're in your car alone. That's where we're at today. And so I'm not going to waste too much time here. I'm just going to get right into the conversation with Prepper Nurse, and I think it's going to be a good one. So last thing I want to say before I get into the interview with him is, like I said last week, I have my own website up. I put in a lot of effort this week to get the website up and look a little bit prettier and less bare bones. Everything's going good with that. I also set up a Patreon account, so if you go to my website, if you're on the desktop, on the upper right hand corner, you'll see a button that says support me. Click on that button, a link will pop up on the screen. If you click that link, it'll take you to Patreon, and if you feel as though I'm putting out good content and you want to support the show and keep the show moving and all that good stuff, you can feel free to make a donation. If you're on mobile, on my website, there should be 3 lines in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Click those lines. There should be a button that pops up called Support Me. Click that button. A link should pop up. And again, click the link and it'll take you to Patreon. And if you feel like I've done a good job with this show and you want to support me and show me your support, feel free to send me a donation. The link to the Patreon will also be in the description of the YouTube video. So like I said, if you could be so kind as to go through my website to listen to this, or go through Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I would prefer if YouTube would be the last destination that you go to view this or listen to this podcast, only because I feel a little offended about them taking my Pizzagate video off. So yeah, I have the site up and running, and that's going well. Make sure to share this podcast with your friends and family and everybody you know who you think might find it interesting. And the more of you who share this podcast on social media, just copy and paste the link on the Facebook and share it. The more of you who share this podcast, the easier it becomes for me to make this podcast and keep more information coming your way, and keep the ideas flowing and the free speech and the freedom of idea movement flowing. So without further ado, let's get into our second guest ever on the Ramblings of a Madman podcast, and we're going to bring in Preppernurse1 to the show. So everybody give a warm welcome to Preppernurse1. So yeah, you're officially the second guest I've ever had on my podcast. This is my 6th episode. So I just wanted to get you on. I wanted to get you to talk a little bit about what you do in terms of your YouTube channel, and talk a little bit how you got into prepping, and like if you want to get into your your origin story of becoming a prepper and going off grid.
Sure. Yeah. Where do you want me to start?
As far back as you're willing to go. I mean, how was there like a specific incident that made you, or not an incident, but or something that
something
you
that
might happen?
My light bulb moment for me was back in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit down in New Orleans. Okay, and the government's response and debacle to that whole incident really was a wake-up call to me, because I realized at that point, I said, man, we can't rely on the government if something happens. Mm-hmm. And at that time in my life, my twins were 4 and Josh was 10 years old. And so it was, me, my ex-wife, and the kids. And I realized, I need to be taking the lead here and being as ready as I possibly can be in case something happens. And so that was my, if you will, defining light bulb moment. And so what I did at that point, I started doing research. And I did a lot of research. And I read a lot of books, figuring out, what works, what doesn't work. I'm sorry about the dog whining. She's just okay. So that was, like I said, that was my defining moment. And so in the course of my research, one of the books, and I could not tell you who wrote it now, or anything like that, but one of the things that stood out in that book that I had read, a lot of great information, but like the one thing was, if you can do it, the guy said, live at your bug out retreat full time. He said, because the main reason for that is when something happens, not a matter of if, but when something happens, you're already there, and all of your stuff is already in place. And that really, really resonated with me, because at the time, I was living in Greece, New York, which is a suburb of Rochester. So literally, we were from the city 10, maybe 15 minutes max from the. If you want to get right into the city, 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and you were in the city. And so I just was like, this is not where we need to be. So
yeah, I'm kind of in like the same boat here. I'm about 20, 25 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be.
No.
But so I started at that point looking for a bug out retreat, and so I bought my first property in a small town called Avoca, which ended up being an hour and a half away from Rochester. And I bought 10 acres on the side of a mountain. Very little flat land on the property. I had a bulldozer guy come in there a couple times and start opening it up for me, and flattening out what he could flatten out. And we started out. We built a 12 by 24 building. We built it ourselves. And then we eventually added on an 8 by 8 addition, which we called the shower room. And so that was eventually going to be the bathroom. And so I didn't have a well or anything up on that property because the elevation was that high. And we were probably looking at having to go down a long way. And at $50 a foot, it wasn't a doable thing. So we set up a rain catchment system. I look back now and I laugh because I set up I had a 90-watt solar system, Harbor Freight solar panels on the roof of my building, and I had 3 batteries in a box behind the building, and that's how we started out. And so what happened was I had made some decisions, and I was saying to the wife, we're going to move up here full time. And instead of paying this $1,225 a month, or $1,225 mortgage a month, we're going to take that money and put it into this property, and we can have a really nice property, because the property was already paid for. I already paid for the property, so I owned it free and clear. Everything that I had built on it was free and clear. I figure, we'll do an addition, we'll do a big addition, and we'll just make it better. Well, she decided to bail at that point. Because as much as some of the women out there will say, yes, I'm on board to their husband, a lot of them are not on board. And a lot of times, unfortunately, what happens, and I'm not saying all women, because there's a lot of women out there that are preppers, so I'm not trying to slight women in any way, shape, or form, but a lot of women, that just scares the crap out of them, that concept, because they can't visualize it. They think worst case, and they're not going to be patient and wait for things to get better.
That's actually a really interesting point. I don't mean to kind of interrupt you here, but there's actually a book, I don't know if you've ever read it, it's called Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. And in this book, he goes into detail about, William Cooper is ex-military intelligence, and he goes into talk about how the military, or the powers that be, know how the human mind works, and how in order to get the society to do something, one of the first things they need to do is to convince men that, if they don't do this thing, that they won't have any women, and they won't be able to procreate and create a family and stuff like that. And that's a good point that you brought up, is that a lot of people see the appeal in this life, but one of the main things that might be holding them back is the woman in their life, or the family side of it.
Absolutely. Yep. And so I've had so many people say to me on my channel, and they've said, I would love to do this, but the wife's not gonna not gonna happen. So, but the thing is, which I think that a lot of these women are very short-sighted in realizing, and this is what I had tried to explain to my ex-wife at the time. I said, look at what we're putting out monthly right now. I said, if we live here, we'll have this amount of money every month, free and clear, to do whatever we want with. I said, that's where I was trying to get to. I was trying to get to that point where, everything wasn't going out the door out of every paycheck. And, I was working myself to death at that point in my life, and I just, I was burnt out, and I needed to do something to change, because I knew I couldn't sustain what I was doing long term. So, lowering my footprint, downsizing, and changing my entire life, if you will, because that's what you do, But like I said, so she decided to take off, and so I ended up having to sell that first property in the divorce. And I'm a big believer everything happens for a reason, because in the course of that time, I contacted a real estate agent, and I said, okay, this is what I'm looking for, and I want to be, within an hour of Rochester. And so we ended up finding the place where I'm at now, and it was perfect, because, it was funny, when we looked at the property initially, my mom had gone with me. And a real estate lady's like, well, here's this property here, and it's got this like shack on it, which is like a hunting lodge cabin thing, which was, was rough shape. A couple of campers attached to it, and I mean, the land was just, undeveloped. It was a rutted dirt path. It was bad, really bad. And so I looked at this property. It had a well on it. It had an artesian well on it. The location was absolutely perfect. It's on a side road, on a dead-end dirt road. So, I mean, location-wise, we don't have through traffic. The town has nothing to do with the maintenance of our road, so the people that live up here take care of that. And that really appealed to me. And I looked at my mom and I'm like, I love this property. And she goes, you know what, I do too. And I said, I see the potential of what it could be. Well, the real estate lady was looking at me like I had 3 heads, but I could see you have to have that vision of what could this be. And, so we bought the property and we got started. And so I started out by putting a 37-foot camper on the property and, bringing supplies up in the camper. And then now we call it the shop, but it was like the outbuilding. And started out with that. Well, we ended up moving up here. And I remember telling my children, because I had custody of we had joint custody, but my kids were with me full time. I mean, that's the way it was. My kids, their mother, their mom, a lot of issues, but that's neither here nor there. But so I had my kids full time. And in the divorce, I had it stipulated that the children will go to school wherever I resided. So I knew we were going to be making a move. I just didn't know to where. Mm-hmm. And so when we knew we were coming here, they were going to go to school out here. And it ended up being perfect because it's a great school district, and it was just really, really good overall. So what happened was we get out here, and we started out, again, in a 37-foot camper. So the kids had, bunk beds for their bedroom, and I had the main bedroom. And that's how we started out. And I remember telling them, I said, okay, listen. I said, these first 2 weeks up here are going to suck. I said, but if you trust me, they will get better. And they're like, okay, Dad. So one of the first things I did is I set up the solar system. And we had a small solar system, and I had a backup generator. Well, the day before we made the move up to the property, I was diagnosed with cancer. So you want to talk about a monkey wrench thrown into your plans? That was a major monkey wrench thrown into my plans. So I ended up having surgery that July. We moved up to the property at the end of June. I had surgery that July for cancer, and so it was a major surgery. So my entire plans changed of what I was going to do next. So I ended up buying a 14 by 40 lofted barn. We had that brought in here, and it had a front door and a back door. And one of my subscribers, he contacted me, and he's also in New York, and he had said, listen, I want to come to your property. We had to redo the base of the building, the foundation, because it wasn't secure enough. I had them put the blocks in wrong because I just didn't know. And so he said, I'm going to come and I'm going to spend 3 days there and I'm going to help you. And I was like, okay. And so he drove from across the other side of New York and came over here. Wow. He stayed in a hotel down in town. He, wouldn't take gas money, nothing. He said, I'm doing this for good karma. He said, my wife is a cancer survivor, and I just want to do this for good karma. So we ended up having to jack the house up, resetting all these blocks, and after resetting all those blocks, I was in a tremendous amount of pain. I mean, it was bad, because I wasn't, close to being healed at that point. And so he ended up putting in the windows that we have in in the house, and and I couldn't begin to thank him enough for that small contribution of his time. It made such a difference. But anyway, so then we got going. We got the house insulated. By the time it was November, we ended up finally getting the wood stove in the house. So we had to get the house wired first, insulated. Then we were starting to work on getting we ended up putting up plywood on the walls. And so we were in the process of that, building out the rooms, but it had gotten too cold to stay in the camper anymore. So we were sleeping on the floor in the house in front of the fireplace. Yeah, so it was a very interesting time. I remember we got through that first winter, and in the spring I said to the kids, I said, okay, if there's one thing that I can do to make your lives better up here right now, what is it? And it was a unanimous more power. Imagine that, right? Yeah. So I revamped my solar system. There's a gentleman that lives out in Oklahoma, Bill and Rosa. They've been off-grid probably a year or two longer than I have. And so I had spoke with him, and he said, copy my system. And so I did. And, that's what, we went from a 12-volt system to a 24-volt system. I added more solar panels. I swapped out my batteries that I had at the time, and I upgraded my batteries. And we used those batteries for several years. And then this last year, I upgraded my batteries again, built a new battery room. The year before, we built a new solar rack. It's been a lot of work, a work in progress, but every year things get better. It just continues to grow. This last year in September, my mom and my sister, they got my sister bought a 14 by 40 lofted barn as well, brought it in, converted it into her living home. And one of the main reasons I upgraded my batteries was because now I'm running 2 homes off my solar system. So it's been quite an adventure. It's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work. The one thing I would tell anybody, if they are contemplating moving off grid, okay, really, really important. The one thing that I would tell them is make sure that you realize everything is not going to go smoothly. There's going to be bumps in the road. Things are going to happen. Monkey wrenches are going to be thrown into the works. You just have to ride it out and realize what your long-term goal is. And if your partner or whoever you're with can, go with that and realize and look at the end result. If you had told me I'd be where I'm at 6 years ago now, I probably wouldn't have believed it. But we've just, we've worked hard. We've worked methodically, and it just, every year it just gets better.
Wow, that was a great answer to your introduction to prepping, and that's really interesting, and I guess it's just like you got to go into it with the mindset that it's not supposed to be easy. Would you agree with that?
I was, my channel was quite small at the time, and I was living, still in Greece. And I would do videos in my basement, and I had like a ton of preps in there, and because that was like one of the first things, getting bug out bags and and everything else, and trying to make my house more efficient. And I put a insert in the wood stove because if we had to hunker down at home for a while, that was going to be the game plan. Mm-hmm. So getting all those things squared away for there, and then at the same time trying to get things squared away up here at the property. So. It definitely, having that vision, and people would say to me, I've been following you since you were doing videos in the basement, and I remember you talking about that you're going to go and live off grid. And they go, and you did it. And the funny part is, and this is why I always say at the end of my videos, I always talk about STD, step, thing, and day. So everybody thinks they know what STD means, right? But it means step, thing, and day. If you work methodically, whatever you're trying to do, you can do it. And your retractors and the people that telling you that you can't do it. I had one of my best friends said to me, there's no way you're going to do it. And my reply was always the same. Watch me. When people told me, you're never going to get that stuff ready before winter, watch me. Because I didn't have a choice. I had to get things squared away. I had to get things done. And we did. We were very, very fortunate. I had help from my family. My mom helped me out a tremendous amount that first year when we were up here. And she actually moved from Florida back to New York at that time. And so she had moved down into town, and they were living down in town. So she was very, very supportive and very, very helpful. And that made such a big difference, And, and now I'm able to repay her back because now she's living here. And when I do my addition this year on my house, she's going to be moving in with me.
Yeah, I had heard you'd mentioned that in your video earlier today. And since you've gone off grid full time and now you live completely off grid, what's been the biggest challenge you faced so far, or one of the moments that sticks out to you as something maybe not as a big challenge, or maybe what's like a bizarre moment that you've had living off grid?
Well, it's just, a lot of people will walk into going off grid with those rose-colored glasses on, okay? Mm-hmm. It's going to be wonderful. Everything's going to be great. We're going to just have a great time. It's going to be fun. And it's not. It is, hey, stop. It is a lot of hard work, but if it is your passion, truly your passion, you don't mind the hard work. I look at it like this. The hard work actually helps me to stay in better physical condition than, doing an office job and doing a 9-to-5 grind and coming home and sitting on the couch and watching TV and those type of things. I have daily chores that I have to do every single day, especially when you have animals. They don't care if you're sick. They don't think they want to be taken care of. So you have responsibilities. So I think that's probably responsibilities would be the biggest difference. And I don't want to say it's a challenge, but it's just different. Your life is different, but different in a good way. A lot of peace of mind comes with it, but you better be willing to work. You better be willing to realize that everything is not going to go perfectly. You're going to have power outages. You're going to have, like I said, those monkey wrenches thrown into the mix. When I had mentioned, to people that I had cancer, and I said, it's a monkey wrench thrown in the works. And somebody, I'll never forget it, somebody said, that's a pretty big monkey wrench. And I'm like, you know what, it is, but it's like, it would have been very easy at that point to say, well, you know what, I got cancer, so I can't do this, I'm going to get an apartment. And it never entered my mind. It never entered my mind. I was like, okay, this is just something that I have to deal with. We'll deal with it. We'll move on. It probably took me a year after that surgery to feel somewhat normal again, to be honest with you. And I will never rehab the strength that I had before my surgery. That's just, I really have to pace myself now. So I try to always contribute that to age, but I know part of it's because of the surgery that I can't go like I used to go.
So, with the world the way it is today, we have a lot of craziness going on in terms of politics and COVID society. I mean, COVID dominates the news cycle. Do you think with everything that's going on in the news between politics and COVID and the potential war with China and Iran, do you think now more than ever more people are going to start looking to go into a life of maybe living off grid?
I'm going to tell you what, there has been a mass exodus of people leaving cities, buying more rural property. And, changing their, they may not be going off grid per se, but they're getting out of that rat race of the cities. There's been a huge upswing in people prepping, people looking to go off grid, looking for guidance, looking for people that, and I'm going to tell you, and this is the advice I would give anybody, because like when I decided to, upgrade my solar system, I went and sought the guidance of somebody that was already doing it, that was already living it. Having somebody tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and they have no background knowledge, first-hand knowledge of that, that's not who you want to listen to. You want to listen to the guy that lives it. And like I said, Bill and Rosa is another off-grid channel. And that's what, I followed and listened to him and had several conversations with him. And, his channel never did take off. But he good guy, very, very solid guy, would talk to you and help anybody. And he probably had half a dozen people that literally built the same exact system that he did. And and thank goodness for people like that. When I was starting out. And hopefully, I know that a lot of people look to me to, as far as mentorship and stuff like that. And I'm always willing to help, to talk to people, to try to guide them in that right direction. Because I'm going to tell you what, the number one thing for my channel, for me, is I try to teach people not to be victims. That's the most important thing. Help yourselves. And that's really important. If you can be proactive in working and striving to helping yourself. Like, here's a very simple statistic that when you think about it, how simple it is to put yourself in an upper echelon. 95% of people in this country, now this is according to FEMA and the Red Cross, if people don't believe me, look it up. 95% of the people in this country are not prepared for a 2-week disaster. So what does that mean? Having enough food and water to supply them for a 2-week period of time in case of any kind of natural disaster. That boggles my mind simply because what we face in this country every single year, forest fires, snowstorms, ice storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, all these things are going to happen every single year, and they happen every year, and still people don't prep. It just blows me away that they don't. But it's a simple thing is having 2 weeks worth of food and water puts you up in an upper echelon of preparedness that most people will never do. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that actually leads me right into my next question for you, which was I wanted to ask you to bring up a video that I had seen when I had first come across your channel. I had actually seen the video a few years ago, but I didn't really check out your channel at the time. And then when the whole COVID thing started breaking out, I guess it's almost a year ago now that COVID started breaking out in the news and taking over the lives of how we live our lives, taking over the way of how we live our lives. I came across your channel again, and that same video came up about you talking about when if shit does hit the fan, and everybody's always like, well, I'll never give up and I'll never go to the FEMA camps and they'll have to pry me out of my house, but you've made a statement on your channel and you said that 90% of the people who are in these areas of FEMA or being affected by disaster in a way that they would have to go to a FEMA shelter, 90% of these people would give up their guns and go willingly to these shelters and these camps. And do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That video actually is still my most viewed video ever. I got like 1.7 million views on that video. And it said 90% of people will go to FEMA camps willingly, and here's why. And I break it down, and it's really, really quite simple. People always think, well, the government's going to come and they're going to sweep and they're going to do this or that or whatever. No, they don't need to do that. All they have to do is wait you out. So what do I mean by that? All they have to do is have it set up where if you come into the FEMA camp willingly, we're going to have medical treatment, we're going to have food, we're going to have shelter, you'll have Wi-Fi, whatever the case may be. And if you are so used to living that way with all those amenities, and then you're thinking, well, I'm going to hold out, I'm not going to no FEMA camp, I'm not giving up my guns, I'm not doing this and that, then your daughter gets sick. And she has some life-threatening sickness, and you can't treat that out there in the bush somewhere, without the amenities and stuff like that. People will give up. They will go in. People will get tired of living the way, without the amenities and stuff like that. And so they'll give up and they'll quit. The wives will be nagging at them. I can't take this. This is horrible. Let's go in. They're going to give us help. Believe me, there's a lot of factors that go into it. So one of the things that I was trying to explain to people, and so my philosophy with living off grid and doing what I'm doing, is I try to explain to people, I want everything everybody else wants, except I don't want to have to pay somebody else to get it. So my perception of things when I looked at things was, I want to keep things as normal as possible in a post-event. So with having my own solar system, if the grid goes down, let's say we had a major grid down situation, I still have power. So I can still have lights, and I can still take a hot shower, and I can still do all the things that everybody else is now no longer doing. The only thing probably that would be different is we wouldn't have internet access. But if you can keep things as normal as possible, especially for the kids, for the wives, in those type of situations, the adjustment period is going to be much easier than, I always try to tell people this, and this is a scenario that I try to put into people's minds. I say, if the lights went off tomorrow and we're not coming back on, how ready are you? And surprisingly enough, and it's not really surprising to me as a prepper, most people go, oh, I have very little. Exactly. And most people out there are in that same boat. So if you can put yourself in a different boat where your family's going to go, geez, you know what, I didn't understand why you did what you did, but now I see it, and thank you so much for doing it. You're not doing it for the accolades, you're doing it because you want your people to survive. You want them not only to survive, but you want them to to thrive. There's a big difference in surviving and thriving. A big difference. And psychologically, people absolutely underestimate the ability to take a hot shower. So let me give you a scenario that happened. So I had my other property when we first started at my other property. And we would go up there all day and we'd be working, and you're dirty and you're nasty. And, you'd heat up some water over the fire and you could take that sponge bath. But when we set up our shower room, and I had the rain catchment system set up, and had the propane and a hot water on demand unit, and was able to take a hot shower at the end of the day, psychologically, that was just such a victory. And it just felt so great. And it's something as simple as that can make a difference in your mindset and how you feel about your situation.
Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't think of that. I don't think the hot shower would be like the thing that would come across people's minds when you talk about things like this, and that's very interesting because it's a lot of it is like the mental aspect. People don't think about not being able to take showers and shit like that, and it's just there's a lot to think about when it comes to these types of topics. And so you already mentioned, most people, they're not prepared for a 2-week disaster. Not most people, 95% of people aren't ready for a 2-week disaster. Now, I'd assume that most of my listeners aren't ready for a 2-week disaster. So, if you could make any recommendation, what's a couple items you would recommend that people have, if they're not going off grid and they're not necessarily ready for a 2-week disaster, what are a couple items that you would definitely recommend that people keep in order to...
The number one thing that people should have, the number one thing, is some way to purify water. It's very, very simple. Hold on one second. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to tell you an example of something. Hold on.
Okay.
Of course, it's not right where I need it to be. All right, I can't find it off the top of my head here. Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking for it. I wanted to give you the exact name of it, but there are. If you go to Walmart, for an example, and you go to the sporting goods section, they have a lot of different things there that can purify water. In a post-event, most people are going to die from dysentery, not from being shot, not from some other thing, other diseases or something. They'll die from dysentery because they're going to drink tainted water. And when they drink tainted water, they're going to get diarrhea, and they're going to die because of that. Okay, so being able to purify water is the number one thing people need to think about. Without fresh water, you're dead in 3 days. So having like I said, that 2-week supply of fresh water, but then having some way to purify water, and there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can go with that. I would encourage people to just do the research, purifying water, water purification. Catadine is one. It's a camping thing that they have. There's so many different options out there. It's beyond how many that are out there. But one of the things that I have in my preps, and I have it in my home, is a big Berkey. I think it's a really great thing to have. Again, purify water. Again, great thing to have. So you can take that tainted water, put it in there, and then you can drink it afterwards. I would encourage people to have that number one more than anything else. After that is getting food. And when it comes to food, buy things that you will eat. If you've never eaten rice on a regular basis, should you have rice in your preps? Absolutely you should, because it's a good base to have anyway. But if you don't eat rice on a regular basis in your diet, that's not going to be your go-to food. But if it is, that's great. Beans, any kind of beans, split peas, yellow beans, I'm trying to think, kidney beans, black beans, you name it, any kind of beans. They have a very nice long shelf life, a 30-year shelf life. They're a good thing to have in your preps as well. I would suggest that people get canned goods. Get things that you eat on a regular basis. So if you go to the store, and this is a really simple way, because I always get this argument, well, I don't have the money to get extra stuff. Okay. I tell people, I don't care how poor you are, you have the money if you if you do it. So instead of buying one can of, let's go with chicken noodle soup. So you go to the store and you normally buy 2 cans of chicken noodle soup a week, right? So instead of buying 2, you buy 4 cans. and then you start a rotation. So the next time you go to the store, the next week to buy your chicken noodle soup again, instead of buying 2 cans, you buy 4 cans again. Now you have the 2 cans that you're going to use in that week. Now you have 4 cans as a backup. And your oldest stuff you use first. And so, I don't care if it's raviolis, peas, corn, whatever in a can, meat in the can, all those type of things, but get things you're going to eat. Get things that you would eat on a regular basis now. Canned fruits are another great thing to have. Most people like fruits, so, get your pineapple, get your pears, your peaches, your fruit cocktail, those type of things. Really good stuff to have. You want to have something, like I said, you can do it very slowly, and before you know it, you actually have a lot of preps. I've had many people tell me, because, they listen to my channel and they started doing it the way that I have said. And I've had people on very, very fixed incomes. And they've said to me, you know what, because of listening to you, I did what you said, and now I have 6 months, 8 months worth of backup as far as food goes. And to me, that's just, that it makes me happy, because that's one less victim out there. And that's what I want people to do. I want them to be proactive. Don't look for somebody else to be your savior. Save yourself. So, and like I said, anybody can do it. You just have to work at it slowly and methodically. When is the other shoe going to drop? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But it will drop at some point. And how ready are you for that? So why would you not put yourself in a position not only to survive, but to thrive in a post-event? That's what I never could understand.
Absolutely. And, hopefully, more and more people are starting to wake up to that and are going to, take this advice. And, it just makes me a lot more thankful for people like you who are out there spreading these messages, and you're doing so by, just living your normal life. It might not have been normal for you when you first started your channel, but right now you're just, it's basically like you're making a documentary about your life. And I just think that's awesome. I think what you do and it just promotes free thinking, and I'm all about that. And that's what this show is about. Is I love to say it. The goal of this show is to promote the idea of freedom of ideas and freedom of thinking, not necessarily just free speech, but free thinking, because we can say a lot of things, but we don't always think about those things that we say, and that's one of the biggest things I like to take away from this show. And one of the things I like to take away from your videos, every video you always end your videos with like a very positive message, and along the lines of, doesn't matter who you are, just love each other. And that's one of my biggest messages always is, and a lot in today's society now, so more so than ever, we're always fighting against each other for no reason, really. We hate people that we've never even met before because of opinions that have been brought down from media and politics. And I just love that message of peace, love, and positivity that you spread at the end of your videos.
Well, it's amazing to me. It's unfortunate, actually, how easily manipulated we are as a society. Mm-hmm. So when 9/11 happened, then Al Qaeda, ISIS, they became the boogeyman. So then all of a sudden, we had this new enemy, this invisible enemy to hate. These Muslims that were trying to take over everything, and there was a lot of hate crimes after 9/11 of people attacking American Muslims, which is very, very unfortunate, because it's like, because of the actions of a small fraction of people of a religious group, you can't blame everybody for those actions.
No, exactly.
And so that's why I always try to tell people, I always say, we're all in this together, because we're one race called the human race. They have had us divided for so long, especially the white and black aspect of it, hating each other because of, that, or looking down on somebody because, they were different than we were. And it's just, it's insanity to think that way. And they do it, and I say they, I mean the powers that be, the people that are really truly in charge.
Exactly.
They want us fighting each other Because as long as we're continuing to fight each other over race, religion, or politics, we will never focus on the true problem, which really, truly, if people would look at it, is big business and the government. That's the problem. They want to control everything, every aspect of your life. You look at all the rules that we have now that we didn't have 100 years ago. You have to get permission to hunt, so you have to get your hunting license. And if you don't have your hunting license and the game warden catches you, it's huge, huge fines. Fishing, same thing. Fishing license, you have to have a fishing license. When you build something on your property, you better get permission from the town, because if you don't, they'll come in and fine you. They may make you take it down. I mean, there's just so many things now, so many aspects of control. Once you get into suburbia, and let's say you decide, hey, I'm gonna put up a wind turbine and try to create some of my own power. Well, you better look at what the rules are for living in that town, because they may have it in their bylaws that you're not allowed to have a wind turbine. And if that's the rule, guess what? You don't get it. And you think, that this is my property and I can do what I want, but you really can't.
I couldn't agree more with anything than that, what you just said right there. And we are stuck, fighting each other. I made it a big point in a couple of my early episodes, talking about I don't get caught up in, identity politics. And because I think, we all have our political opinions, but when we get so passionate about these political opinions, all we end up doing is separating ourselves. And I think since, I don't know, for the last 5 or so years, we've seen this push to where, like, you can't just have a political opinion anymore. It has to be your entire identity. And so you come across somebody who doesn't have that a political opinion, which is now an identity, like it's like unacceptable, and it causes all this chaos. And it's just, and if only we could just talk about this shit, and life could be so much easier if we could just talk about how we actually feel, and converse these things out, and actually grow as a society. Nonetheless, I think this is a good place to stop. And you've been a tremendous guest for me. Probably my best guest so far. You're only my second guest, so well, no problem. My pleasure. And like I said, you know what? As long as people realize that we're in this together, regardless of race, religion, political identity, at the end of the day, when something goes really, truly wrong, nobody's going to care what your political affiliation is. Exactly. Nobody's going to care what religion you are. Nobody's going to care what race you are. As long as you can help each other, that's what it's going to be about. Yeah, exactly. And listen, man, thank you again for coming on the show. It means a lot to me as a small podcaster, trying to grow. I'm trying to start my own platform here because YouTube took down one of my videos that was my most popular video podcast episode. They took down my most popular podcast episode because I was talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and so they just took it completely off of the internet. So after that happened, I was like, I'm just gonna make my own website. I'm gonna tell all my listeners, go to my website and try to, if you can, just go to my website and view my content through the website instead of going through YouTube. And that's what I've been trying to push in terms of this show. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your show? Go ahead and plug your show before you get on out of here.
All right, I'm sorry. So yeah, my website. Well, I have a website and I have my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Preppernurse1. It's basically geared towards prepping and living off grid. I also have a website, Preppernurse1.com, that people can go.
All right, I'm not really sure what happened to those last few seconds of audio footage there, but yes, again, you can go to his website. You can find his YouTube channel. He is Preppernurse1. He was a tremendous guest for me today, and gave some great insight and great conversation and great dialogue into his way of life and living, and with everything that goes involved in with everything that's involved in living a life off grid and prepping and all that. So yeah, I want to thank Prepper Nurse for coming on the show today. He did not have to do that. I'm a very small podcaster, very small content creator, and if only everybody could be like Prepper Nurse and look out for the little guys. So yeah, that's about it for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ramblings of a Madman. This is your host, Mark Ciccarella, aka the Rambling Madman. And just remember, keep on keeping on, and we are all gods out here, and have a wonderful day.